Greetings, my fellow Sumo Southern Thinkers. It's LL3's Blues Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Mango, South Florida, and today's date is Wednesday, September 12th, 2018. So let us begin. Ow, a little bit early there, but that's okay. Just hope everyone's having a good night or day, whatever you're at. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I'm just hanging out. Got cleaned up. Feel really good. Just a little hot. It's hot earlier today, and then I'll just cool down. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the hurricane and many other topics. He's going with the whole Gillum thing. Now they're trying to label him anti-Semitic. Of course, Gillum, his team's calling DeSantis racist. It's getting so half-assed. So, and I'll talk about the battle of the established. The candidates for the tyrannical establishment. Exactly. You know what's so funny when you hear some of these promises they're making? Like when Gillum wants the $15 an hour minimum wage for the state of Florida. But he has to realize one thing. It has to be voted by the people. You can't use rhetoric that will be considered post de facto. As guaranteed under Article 1, Section 10 of the Florida Constitution, and even to the Dinkleberries that supported the language of that School Safety Act, that you have to be 21 and over to purchase a rifle and a 3-day waiting period on a state level. Null and void, because we voted on it post ex post de facto law. Article 1, Section 10 of the Florida Constitution. For all you folks out there that are willing to vote for your chosen one, you better start doing your homework more thoroughly instead of hearing lip service and getting caught hook, line, and sinker. That's just one of the areas I'm going to be talking about. And Donald Trump did an executive order on sanctions for any foreign interference with the U.S. elections. Will that include Israel? Think about, don't worry, it's not being anti-Semitic, so don't be too sensitive if I'm critical of the rogue elements in that nation as well, the governmental institution to be exact. And of course, it's going to do, just decide to wing it here once again. So, I just got a new mic, little Samsung mic. I got today at Best Buy for $25. So I'm giving it a little shot, see how it comes out, give it a little test run, and it's pretty cool. They might hear some stuff in the background and all that, so my first time using this. And because the other mic I had, the Yeti Blue, I have a little Lenovo notebook, so it's been like exceeding the power. So, but I'm going to keep that microphone when I get bigger equipment in the very near future. So, all right, let's begin with this. In reference to Fukishima in America, 12 nuclear power plants are in the path of Hurricane Florence. Flooding, storm surge, threatening cooling operations. The Daily Sheeple report post this. Actually, if I'm correct, it's from Natural News. Yeah, I hate when they have all these nice little articles and President Bolton threatens Russia. Yeah, some national security advisor. Come on, Trumpsters. It's okay to have neocons in power as long as I got Trump in there. Yahoo! Just a very good example. Just like the Obamanoids. You can't talk ill about my king, my Lord and Savior. But you know what? I will win on this garbage. I was talking about Syria too, so on this as well. This actually came from the Natural News Network. Just to let you folks know about the whole Fukushima in America. You can see the hurricane targeting. Now it's a 4, now it's a 3. So now it's a now is a 3, so this is a little bit, came out early, but it's something to really talk about. And as it reads here, at least 12 nuclear reactors are predicting the path of Florence, which has been upgraded to a Category 4. Now it's a 3. As it surges towards the U.S. East Coast, according to the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which offers an interactive map of nuclear reactors. 2 plants are vulnerable of both heavy rainfall and expected storm surge could be up to 20 feet of ocean water pouring into coastal areas. These 2 reactors, located northeast of Myrtle Beach, North Carolina, are known as Brunswick Steam Electric Plant Unit 1 and Brunswick Steam Electric Plant Unit 1. Interesting, huh? Steam. Each unit produces only 1,000 megawattage of electricity, and they are both built on the General Electric Type 4 power plant design, which is almost identical to the GE power plant designed using Fukushima Daiichi reactors in Japan. All these reactors are designed and constructed as a boiling water reactors, or BWRs. The designs are decades old, and they are subject to catastrophic failures and even core meltdowns that release radioactive isotopes directly into the atmosphere and surrounding areas. According to the current forecast, these nuclear power plants appear to be in the direct line of Hurricane Florence. Here's the current forecast from the NOAA, which brings the hurricane directly into the North Carolina coast. And this was here's a map of it. That's on September 11th. So, and it's still going at northwest direction. So it'd be from west northwest to northwest. So yeah, it looks like it may hit. It may just be a little further. We'll just wait and see. So all you folks out there, please hunker down and be safe. The Brunswick plant is a boiling water reactor, just like Fukushima. As a link from the U.S. NRC shows, the Brunswick Steam Electric Plant Unit 1 is also a boiling water reactor. It was originally authorized for operation in 1976 and is licensed to continue operating through 2036. The following diagram shows how BRWs operate using the heat from a nuclear reaction to turn water into steam that drives the steam turbines, which generate electricity. And there's a cool little map on here and all that. So don't worry, I'm going to post this on my footnotes, so it's all well and good, okay? I'll definitely do that. And here's another one too, but boiling water reactor plants must sit at a low elevation near rivers or lakes in order to have access to cooling waters. BWR nuclear power plants rely on cooling designs that uses large bodies of local water, rivers, or lakes to transfer heat from the nuclear power plant to the atmosphere. This heat transfer is necessary to prevent nuclear fuel rods from overheating and melting down in a runaway nuclear reaction. Importantly, this cooling operation relies on electricity to run the cooling pumps that circulate the water. For this reason, U.S. nuclear power plants are equipped with multiple redundant cooling systems and backup generators that can run the pumps even if the local power grid is cut off. At the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power facility, both backup diesel engines and battery power systems were present. You might wonder then how the electricity failed on all accounts, causing the cooling pump to stop operating, ultimately leading to criticality of the fuel rods, i.e. a meltdown. For the record, the entire U.S. media lied about the Fukushima meltdown, claiming no meltdown had occurred. Only now, years later, does the media admit a nuclear meltdown took place, but in the original reporting, they universally claimed there was no meltdown. There's another example how the media relentlessly lies about everything, not just politics. Absolutely. The answer is found in the storm surge, with a massive wave of ocean water that swept through the Fukushima facility, drowning the diesel generators, cooling pumps, and backup batteries. In effect, Fukushima was inundated with ocean water, and everything stopped functioning, but the physics of the fuel rods were still operating, and you can't stop fission reactions just by hoping and wishing. So the fuel rods melted down, and the nuclear meltdown took place, producing the Fukushima catastrophe. We're still, suffering. Suffering under today. So it's still affecting. It affected the whole area in Japan, Siberia, and even along Alaska, and even the Pacific coastline as a whole. When you see that, it's very disheartening. As a nuclear regulatory commission explains on its page, reactor cores contains fuel assemblies that are cooled by water, circulated using electricity powered pumps. These pumps and other operating systems in the plant receive their power from the electrical grid. If off-site power is lost, the emergency cooling system is supplied by other pumps, which can be powered by on-site diesel generators. Other systems, safety systems, such as a containment cooling system, also need electric power. BWRs contain between 370 to 800 fuel assemblies. What the NRC doesn't explain, however, is what happens when all electrical power and the backup generators fail. The Brunswick power plant sits at the very low elevation near the ocean. The concern among observers today is that the Brunswick steam electric plant sits at the very low elevation in Southport, North Carolina, just a few feet above sea level. The power plant sits directly on the Cape Fear River, which was artificially modified to be used by the nuclear power facility so that the coolant water could be drained into the ocean just to the east. Notably, Archer Daniels Midland also sits about a half-mile away from this facility. Interesting, right? To the east of the Brunswick power plant is Zeki's Island, a thin barrier between Brunswick power plant and the Atlantic Ocean. Zeki's Island will, of course, be instantly underwater if the expected 20 feet ocean surge achieves a direct hit on this area. Exactly. So something to really look at, my friends. And you got a map on here as well. Yeah, that's going to be... Hopefully we'll just see what happens. Now, even though it's a Category 3, you got a moped or motorcycle lawnmower coming by here. It's going to be very intriguing because now it went down to Category 3, 150 miles up, but still got the gust winds. So that's going to be really 150 miles an hour. That's going to be a little bit different. So we'll just continue on here. A 20 feet ocean surge would, without question, threaten the Brunswick nuclear power plant. To what extent, we can't say. Presumably, high qualified technicians are preparing the power plant for the coming hurricane. And again, Fukushima was also run by highly qualified technicians and really smart nuclear engineers who claim a meltdown could never be possible, could possibly take place. Take all official assurances without the heavy dose of the skepticism and perhaps a dosimeter as well. So yeah, absolutely. So you gotta look at all these areas. Yeah. Nuclear meltdown release radioactive iodine 131. What's the big deal? Here had a little bike thing. What's the big deal about nuclear power plants melting down and releases radioisotopes into the atmosphere? That's a question. The problem is found in the toxic mix of radioisotopes released in such catastrophes. Various isotopes are released, most notably including iodine 131 and cesium 137, along with other isotopes of uranium and plutonium, depending on the elemental composition of the fuel used. Iodine 131 and cesium 137 are extremely dangerous because they are relatively short half-lives. In the realm of physics, a shorter half-life means the element is giving off radiation more quickly, releasing more energy surrounding ecosystems of organisms, which would include you. In fact, the safer radioisotopes are those with very long half-lives, since they release relatively little radiation in any given time period. Iodine 131 has half-life of roughly 8 days. For purposes of simplifying things, we'll call it a week. Cesium 137 has a half-life of roughly 30 years. Note, as a matter of the establishing some qualifications here, I'll remind readers that I'm the patent holder of the patent called Cesium Eliminator, a dietary supplement that was approved by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office in 2014. You can read the patent there. There's a link for that. You can read about the inventions, how it works, the lab test proven its efficacy at its link at cesiumeliminator.com. So it says here, Cesium Eliminator is not for sale to the public. I'm stockpiling the ingredient of Cesium Eliminator in Texas, where I have around 10,000 kilograms of raw materials ready to manufacture. I will only offer it or donate to organizations when needed in a nuclear emergency. I developed Cesium Eliminator as a way to remove Cesium Eliminator from the digestive tract so that people who drink cesium-contaminated water or eat cesium-contaminated water can have a safe, effective way to eliminate cesium from their bodies. This avoids the cesium absorbed into the bloodstream where it circulates into internal tissues and irradiates the body from the inside, causing cancer, immunosuppression, or death. As the U.S. EPA testifies its own website, Cesium-137, that is dispersed in the environment like that from the atmospheric testing is impossible to avoid. People may ingest Cesium-137 with food or water or may inhale it as dust, just like radionuclides. Exposure to radiation from Cesium-137 results in increased risk of cancer. So it's pretty dangerous out there. So you have to, folks that live near nuclear power plants in that state, please be aware. In the aftermath too, it takes 10 halves of the radioisotopes to fall to zero. Here's what you need to remember in all this. It takes about 10 halves of radiation to fall to a level considered zero. Iodine 131, that means 10 weeks. How the physics work, roughly speaking. Week 1, you were exposed to the final dose of iodine 131 radiation. Week 2, you're exposed to half the dose. Week 3, you're exposed to a quarter of the dose. Week 4, you're exposed to 1/8 of a dose, and so on. Iodine 131, of course, gets absorbed into the body through foods and beverage, including cow's milk, where it tends to accumulate in the thyroid gland. This causes irradiation of the thyroid gland from the inside, essentially burning out this gland, leading to lifelong health problems that include cancer and death. And I knew people had that, so it is very vital that you keep those areas healthy. For this reason, U.S. government officials strongly encourage people to have supplementary iodine available as a dietary supplement. When iodine is consumed as a supplement, the non-radioactive iodine elements are deposited into the thyroid gland, locking up all the iodine receptor sites there, plus covering other iodine-ready organs such as breast tissue and prostate tissue. So, causing radioactive iodine to have nowhere to expect to leave the body through normal elimination. So I'm just going to do a quick response here. On my phone. One of my good friends and brothers. But we'll call him tomorrow. And just making sure everything's okay here. Good. All right. So we're going to, so here, thus, when the body takes supplementary iodine, they may prevent radioactive iodine from lodging in their body. This reduces total exposure to the radioactive iodine. Since it's naturally eliminated from the body over time, iodine and other elements having something called a blood life, half-life, which means how long it takes the body to eliminate from them circulating, does not confuse this with the psychic half-life, physics half-life, which refers to the transmutation of elemental mass and into energy over time. It does continue on, but the truth of the matter is, you got folks got to be out there, be safe in that area, please, and be ready, because I say we run these nuclear power plants, you have to anticipate health issues. So like I said, my friends, all my folks, although my brothers and sisters in the Carolina areas, be safe. Stick together, and please help one another, okay? Because there's not going to be any guarantees with the National Guards. I know the system getting a little better, because even what happened like with Andrew in 92, it got a lot better. Not perfect, but people got to start working as a team. Hey, I remember Irma, everyone's like, ah! It doesn't work. Screaming around and rushing and panicking isn't gonna be the issue. That's not the main objective. You gotta stay calm, focus, and have people work as a team in your family. And even you have some of the kids do a couple small things to teach them how to prepare for storms like this. Because I learned how to put up boards, in 1979 when Hurricane David came through. So we prepped up in these areas. It's a joint venture. Can't go, Jesus Christ, oh my God. It doesn't work. It's counterproductive. So that's all I got to say about that. And I'll be right back. All right, so we're going to do a couple here in reference to Syria. SignOfTheTimes.net. And it says here, the real problem for Syria's Idlib offensive is Turkey. Yeah, because I know Turkey looks like they're not too thrilled with the NATO relationship with the NATO nations. And, of course, what happened with the coup attempt that occurred a couple of years ago. It says here, after deliberating the region of Dara and the border with the Golan Heights in the southwest of the country, the Syrian army has turned its attention to the northern province of Idlib. Idlib. The last stronghold of the rebels that these ones backed by Turkey and Al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist groups. The Battle of Idlib had been expected for weeks, yet against all talk of a buildup of troops and the alarmist declarations of Western powers. The offensive may take some time to begin. When it does, it may be more resemble a careful, patient, and strategic hunt rather than the shock and awe. The Independent's Middle East correspondent Robert Fisk is, as far as we know, the first and only Western journalist to have assessed the situation from the front line of Idlib. Okay, I hope I pronounced that name right. Rather than witnessing the 100,000 Syrian soldiers said to be amassing for the assault, he came across a contingent of some 200 Syrian soldiers with no armored vehicles or heavy weaponry. Not much else of the ordinary was to be seen, what would indicate that the storming of Idlib was imminent. Only preparatory Russians and Syrian airstrikes targeting jihadi positions between the Hama and the Idlib have been reported. It was to be expected that the attack would not begin before President Vladimir Putin of Russia, Hassan Rouhani of Iran, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey met in Tehran on the 7th of September to discuss a common strategy for Syria. Before and after the meeting, the government of Turkey echoed to the West's opposition to the offensive in the name of avoiding civilian casualties. This is, of course, a hypocritical narrative, as the U.S. showed no such concern when leveling Raqqa last year with the help of Kurdish militias, and Turkey is illegally occupying the northern sea of Syria around Afrin and has vested interest in protecting Wahhab Wantania al-Tur, aka National Front for Liberation, a rebel coalition, a Kuwait in which controls half the territory of Idlib. The other half is the hands of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the latest incarnation of Al-Qaeda in Syria, yet the offspring itself, New World Order elements. So it has here with the map itself that was going on in northwest Syria and so forth as of September 2018. Talks about about the controls and who's controlling what, the occupation and so forth. So it's going to be a little cloak and daggering happen in that area. And it says here, Turkey's original reason for stepping into Syria was to drive Kurdish militias away from its borders. While this has worked so far, has also interesting consequences. One that is that Turkey has placed the U.S. forces in northeast Syria in a difficult position, being unable to defend their Kurdish proxies against a fellow NATO member. Another that the Kurds and Central Syrian government have found common cause, besides defeating ISIS and ridding north of Turkish forces. What both of these effects have in common is that they obstruct America's infamous Plan B of slicing Kurdistan out of Syria in order to turn it into a U.S.-Israel client state. Turkey, Russia, and Iran are joining forces in regards to certain key issues apart from Syria, for example, in ditching the dollar for their commercial transactions. While Syria is determined to recover the entirety of its territory, it naturally does not need a confrontation with Turkey. Therefore, if there is no hurry to start the Battle of Idlib, it is probably because Russia, Syria, and Iran are attempting to reach a compromise with Turkey. So it'll be that's what they're doing, more like diplomatic and be formal. And it says here, as they buy time, the liberators of Syria will be especially interested in avoiding any inconvenient escalations that disturb the process of reconciliation. This will explain in part why Russia has been insisting so much that the threat of U.S. and European officials, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and Nikki Haley, among others, to retaliate against Syria if it uses chemical weapons, will be met with a false flag provocation organized by terrorist groups, the White Helmet, in Idlib, as they did earlier this year in Doma. As I write this, the Russian Reconciliation Center in Syria has announced that the White Helmets have shot 9 videos of a staged chemical attack in the town of Jisr el-Shugur. Russia has warned against such tricks in the past, but the amount of detail about the nature and timing provided on this occasion seemed to be intended to discourage or postpone their publication of preemptively destroying their credibility, therefore disrupting a U.S.-UK-French aggression on Syrian forces. If the U.S. perform airstrikes against Syria, we will most likely see a repeat of the limp display we saw back in April, although the possibility of escalation is ever present. Still, at the point in time, what Turkey does next is more critical to the end of the Syrian war than anything Americans and European forces could do. Unfortunately, Turkey is not making things easy for itself or its neighbors. The following video, dated September 11, shows Turkish military convoys purportedly building up their forces inside Idlib and Aleppo. By supporting terrorist groups in Syria, Erdogan has made a deal with the devil and will now have to pay the price. Sooner or later, either by force or diplomacy, Turkish forces will have to leave Syria. But when that happens, will it become the remnants of the soon-to-be-destroyed Habat al-Rantania al-Shur and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham? What of the refugees? Will they cross the border into Turkey, even if it's without its consent? And once there, what will they do? It is entirely possible that Turkey is being blackmailed by the U.S. and its Gulf allies. If it refused to side with their agenda, it might find itself overrun by jihadists just like Syria. Perhaps by now, Erdogan has understood that helping to set your neighbor's house on fire carries a risk of burning down your own. Syrian rebels threatens Erdogan against selling Idlib. A militant from unspecified group stationed in Idlib has issued a threat to Turkish President Recep Tayyip, warning that militants in northwestern Syria have dug a tunnel stretching into Turkey's Hatay province. He went on to explain the event of Erdogan selling Idlib militants will use the tunnel to cross into Turkey to potentially carry out attacks against civilians and security forces. Reyhanli, a town in Hatay province, is behind me. As you know, us militants from Gouda are good at digging, and since you've built a 960 kilometer border barrier, we want to tell you, if you sell Idlib or the opposition held areas, we're going to buy Rahani from you. I won't give you more details, but this is your warning, the militant said in the video footage circulating on social media. The video was published just days after the Trilateral Summit in Tehran, attended by Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Iranian and Turkish counterparts, to discuss the situation in Idlib ahead of the Syrian army's impending offensive. Interesting here. So we just got to see how far this thing goes. And I know U.S. forces are in an area. They need to leave. Okay, I don't know what the hell. You got the same status quo when President Obama was in there. You got a bunch of warmongering demonides saying we gotta go there and protect the ISIS, allegedly. That's been talked about in some of the interesting publications I read from antiwar.com and many others, including Blackstone Media. So we'll hopefully, let it be. Let them take care of their problem. When the United States is not invited to be there, get the hell out. That's how I look at it. Why should our tax dollars go to some illegal war? All right? And I don't give a damn what Michael Bolton says. He threw his ass on the front line, as far as I'm concerned. The guy's nothing more than some stooge pigeon. And many other of these little cornballs. And it says here, Ray McGovern talks about this too, on the brink with Russia and Syria again 5 years later. It is deja vu over again in Syria, with the way on the verge with confrontation with Russia as Donald Trump faces his biggest decision as yet president, comments Ray McGovern. New York Times on September 11, 2013, commented Russian President Vladimir V. Putin's desire to speak directly to the American people and their political leaders about recent events surrounding Syria. Putin's op-ed in the Times appeared under the title Plea for Caution from Russia. In it, he warned that military strike by the U.S. against Syria will result in more innocent victims and escalation, potentially spreading the conflict far beyond Syria's borders. And unleash a new wave of terrorism, I could throw the entire system of international law and order out of balance. 3 weeks before Putin's peace on August 21st, there has been a chemical attack in the Damascus suburb of Ghouta, and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was immediately blamed. There soon emerged, however, ample evidence that the incident was a provocation to bring direct U.S. military involvement against Assad, lest Syrian government forces retain their momentum and defeat the jihadist rebels. In a memorandum for President Barack Obama 5 days before Putin's articles on September 6th, the veteran intelligence professionals for sanity, or VIPs, have warned President Barack Obama of the likelihood that the incident in Gaza was a false flag attack. Despite his concern of a U.S. attack, Putin's main message in his op-ed was positive, talking of growing mutual trust. A new opportunity to avoid military action has emerged in the past few days. The United States, Russia, and all members of the international community must take advantage of the Syrian government's willingness to place its chemical arsenal under international control for subsequent destruction. Judging by the statements of President Obama, the United States sees this as an alternative to military action. Syria's chemical weapons were the fact destroyed under UN supervision the following year. Welcome the President's interest in continuing the dialogue with Russia on Syria. We must work together to keep this hope alive and steer the discussion back toward negotiations. If we can avoid force against Syria, this will improve the atmosphere in international affairs and strengthen mutual trust and open the door to cooperation on other critical issues. Obama refused to strike. In a lengthy interview with journalist Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic much later in March 2016, Obama showed considerable pride in having refused to act according to what he called the Washington playbook. He added a telling vignette that escaped appropriate attention in the establishment media. Obama confided to Goldberg that during the crucial last week of August 2013, National Intelligence Director James Clapper paid the president an unannounced visit to caution him that the allegation against Assad was responsible for the chemical attack in Gaza and was not a slam dunk. Clapper's reference was to the very words used by former CIA Director George Tenet, which he characterized falsely the nature of the evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq while briefing President George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney in December 2002. Additionally, evidence that Gaza was a false flag came in December 2016 parliamentary testimony in Turkey. And I'm not really clear about George Tenet, so I'm just going to keep on going here. In early 2013, around the time of Putin's op-ed, Obama resisted the pressure of virtually all his advisors to launch cruise missiles on Syria and accepted the Russian broker deal for Syria give up its chemical weapons. Obama followed public opinion that had to endure public outrage from those lusting for the U.S. to get involved militarily. From neoconservatives in particular, there was hell to pay. Atop the CNN building in Washington, D.C. on the evening of September 9th, 2 days before Putin's peace, I had a fortuitous, up and personal opportunity to watch the bitterness and disdain in which Paul Wolfowitz and Joe Lieberman heap abuse on Obama for being too cowardly to attack. I say you throw their rear ends on the front line. Let's see how this bend-over bobbing dynamic duo can do. 5 years later, in his appeal for cooperation with the U.S., Putin had written these words reportedly by himself. My working and personal relationship with President Obama is marked by growing trust. I appreciate this. I carefully studied his address to the nation on Tuesday, and I would rather disagree with the case he made on American exceptionalism, stating that the United States policy is what makes America different. What makes us exceptional. It is extremely dangerous to encourage people to see themselves as exceptional, whatever the motivation. There are big countries and small countries, rich and poor, those with long democratic traditions and those still finding their way to democracy. Their policy differs too. We're all different, but when we ask for the Lord's blessings, we must not forget that God created us equal. In recent days, President Donald Trump's National Security Advisor, John Bolton, has left no doubt that this is the mascot of American exceptionalism. Its corollary is Washington's right to send its forces uninvited into countries like Syria. Like I said, throw him on the front line. Let's see how tough Mr. Bolton is. We try to convey the message in recent days that if there's a third use of chemical weapons, with the response will be much stronger, Bolton said on Monday. See, the same old scenario. Same old song and dance. This is pretty that's why I'm not really crazy about these clowns. He should. I just wonder if he has an altar of the late Zbigniew Brzezinski and Climax. It's like, I will pursue the grand chessboard ideology. I will fulfill your legacy right from that book. Make it a reality. You can thank me later in seance. I can say we've been in consultation with the British and French who have joined us in the second strike, and they also agree that another use of chemical weapons will result in a much stronger response. As was the case in September 2013, Syrian government forces, with Russia's support, have the rebels on the defensive, this time in Idlib province, where most of the remaining jihadists have been driven. On Sunday began what could be the final showdown of the 5-year war. Bolton's warning of a chemical attack by Assad makes little sense, as Damascus is clearly winning. The lasting Assad would do is to invite U.S. retaliation. You got Nikki Haley in there. Already know who did it. See, that's what she claims. I want to see this so-called brave woman going to the front line as well. Imagine that. You bring in Marco Rubio too, right? All these flamboyant fools. U.S. Ambassador to UN Nikki Haley, with remarkable prescience, had already blamed Damascus for whatever chemical attack might take place. The warnings of direct U.S. military involvement greater than Trump's two previous pinprick attacks is an invitation for the concerned jihadists to launch another false flag attack to exactly bring that about. Sadly, not only the growing trust recorded by Putin 5 years ago evaporated, but the likelihood of the U.S.-Russian military clash in the region is a perilously high as ever. 7 days before Putin's peace appearances, Donald Trump had tweeted, "Many Syrian rebels are radical jihadists. Not our friends. Supporting them doesn't serve our national interests. Stay out of Syria." This is a September 4th, 2013 at 1:20 p.m. He said this. Yeah. So, President Trump, are you gonna honor it or contradict? In September 2015, Trump accuses Republican primary opponents of wanting to start World War III over Syria. Give me a break. Russia wants to get ISIS, right? We want to get ISIS. Russia is in Syria. Maybe we should let them do it. Let them do it. Of course. Last week, Trump and warned Russian and Syrian not to attack Idlib. Trump faces perhaps his biggest test as president, whether he can resist his neocon advisors and not massively attack Syria, as Obama chose not to, or the risk of wider war he accused his Republican opponents of fomenting. Ray McGovern works with the Tell World and publishing arm Emical Church of Savior in the inner city, Washington. He was an Army infantry intelligence officer and then CIA analyst for a total of 30 years, and was a presidential briefer from 1981 to 85. Yes, so, like I said, let them have it. Don't do anything. Stand down, Mr. Trump. Stand down. No war on Syria. And all those neocon douchebags want it, you go in there. I want to see all these demonods, global demonods, in the front line. That's how I see it. John Bolton and Nikki Haley. Throw them in the front line of battle. Imagine that. Let's see how tough, rugged, and sincere they really are. I have to agree. Nothing more than confounded fools. Apple polishers to the one world order. So, enough of that. Let's just talk about the Gillum. Yes, they're talking about the whole, in the great state of Florida, Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis, right? And this just came from the Beacon. It came out earlier this morning, posted by Adam Credo. Gillum aligns with groups that support boycotts of Israel. Oh my goodness. Run to the hills. Let's see what he has to say about this. Florida gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum has aligned himself with several prominent anti-Semitic organizations known for promoting boycotts of Jewish goods and individuals, fueling questions about how the Democratic candidate would handle issues of import to the state's large pro-Israel community. Gillum, who is running a progressive of a wave of young Democrats highly critical of Israel, is running against Representative Ron DeSantis, a prominent Israel supporter. I'm just wondering if he had signed a contract. I make my pledge of allegiance to the nation of Israel, even though he's supposed to represent the American people, right? Another possible candidate for the tyrannical establishment, just like Gillum, the dynamic duo. Don't believe the hype, my friends, right? The Democrat has The Democrat has a history of working with several organizations to boycott the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, or BDS, as an anti-Semitic movement that seeks to wage economic and political warfare on the Jewish state. So, I'll continue on here. Gillum's open association with these organizations raising questions in the pro-Israel community, particularly as the U.S. state seeks to slash ties with BDS organizations and prevent taxpayer funds from supporting these movements, while Gillum has committed to push back against any Israel efforts like BDS. He has not distanced himself from several organizations leading the charge. DeSantis, meanwhile, has positioned himself firmly against the BDS movement, and he is co-author of legislation that will protect American business from being pressured into backing Israel boycotts. The issue is likely to be praised with both candidates as gubernatorial contest heats up with the state of many Jewish voters. DeSantis, he said he's concerned and dismayed by Gillum's ties to radical anti-Israel groups. In all my years in Florida, I've never seen a candidate for state office who has been as anti-Israel as Andrew Gillum. DeSantis told a Washington Free Beacon in an interview he opposes our assembly in Jerusalem. He does not recognize Jerusalem as Israel's eternal and indivisible capital, and he even criticized Israel's response against Hamas militants in May of 2018. His anti-Israel views are part and parcel of his overall far-left-wing Democrat socialist agenda. He doesn't share values of the vast majority of the people in Florida with his position. So I'm like, I may not be one of the majority then, to be very frank, because when it comes to apartheidism and tyranny, yes, I am going to be critical towards all those countries, including Israel. I do the same thing in my country, the United States of America, and in the great state of Florida. Yes, I do defy all forms of tyranny. So you guys say I'm being anti-Semitic if I criticize members of the Israeli royal government, the Israeli government abusing innocent people and so forth. Something to think about, right? I'm just, being very sincere here, all right? And I'll continue on here. On such group, Dream Defenders has publicly endorsed Gillum, describing him as one of the most progressive candidates in the country. Yay! Woo! Gillum has touted organization in public remarks, saying he is pleased and proud to be endorsed by it. Dream Defender, a Florida-based advocacy group, has emerged as a leader of the Black Lives Matter movement support to abolish the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and is intertwined with backs of the BDS movement, which has made common cause with the Black Lives Matter movement. Yes, another synthetic entity or institution, right? There's something to think about. Dream Defenders routinely criticize Israel for perpetuating what is described as genocide of the Palestinians, and has led at least 2 delegations to Palestine in recent years, according to the organization's website. Palestine is the site of a continuous settler colonial project, the state of Israel. Dream Defenders write on this website, employing language used by many anti-Israel groups to delegitimize Israel. The colonial project was born out of a political ideology called Zionism, established in the late 19th century. Yeah, that does exist. Because remember, Judaism and Zionism are 2 separate movements. Zionism is mainly a secular movement. So I recommend folks to go on this website, JewsAgainstZionism.com. It's very interesting here. You can get more detail about these things. One of his 2016 trips to the region, Dream Defenders employed convicted terrorist Madhu Jeddah as a tour guide. Jeddah, a one-time member of the Popular Front, the Liberation of Palestine, spent 17 years in Israeli prison for planting 4 hand grenades on a Jerusalem street, wounding 9 civilians. He was later released in a prisoner swap. That's pretty, like, when it comes to civilians and innocent people, I cannot support that. But interesting about the criminal elements of Israel, Mossad and all that, they did a lot of dirty work too, but that's called exceptionalism. And I don't support that either. How about the USS Liberty? Right? June 8th, 1967. Look that up when you have a chance. One of the group's co-founders and former members, Ahmad Abazaned, has a long history of anti-Israel activism and promoting the BDS movement, according to the watchdog Canary Mission, which distracts anti-Semitic activism online. As with numerous organizations associated with the Black Lives Matter movement, Jim Ferris has adopted Palestine as one of his pet issues and regularly promotes anti-Israel materials, according to the investigation by Legal Insurrection, which has documented organization's evolutions. Gillum has also supported and attended the Rockwood Leadership Institute, an organization financed by the New Israel Fund, a chief promoter of Israel boycotts and materials maligning the Jewish state. One alum of the institute is Linda Sassar, a prominent anti-Israel activist who has decimated anti-Semitic material and has been labeled by pro-Israel organizations as a chief promoter of the BDS movement. So how does criticizing the Israeli government anti-Semitic? Okay, I'm going to continue on here. On August 29th, Gillum appeared on a podcast called GOG, or G-H-O-G-H, hosted by Jamarlin Martin, where he was asked about a recent campaign by Hamas to infiltrate terrorist cells across the Israel-Gaza border under cover of civilian rioting. Martin referred to me some 60 Palestinians who were throwing rocks and protesting while I viewed as apartheid. They don't deserve to be shot. Can you speak to the 60 Palestinians that were murdered and the lack of a Democratic Party condemnation of human rights violation? Gillum responded to claim the Palestinians were murdered while protesting apartheid by saying, none of us look at those images and be okay with it. In the hands of this Trump administration, now we have even more violence by recognizing Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel and also locate the United States Embassy there. Again, just add more fuel to the fire. I think it was a provocation by the president that was unnecessary and it has been costly from the human toll. There's an interview. Gillum characterizes Israel's response to rocket attacks on citizens as, in my opinion, an outside response that has created a humanitarian crisis. So you expect this. Racist DeSantis versus anti-Semitic Gillum. You see what's going on, my friends? This is a dog and pony show. Absolutely. And to be very frank, some of the folks out there, even who are DeSantis supporters, should ask them the question, have you signed your pledge to Israel while you were in Congress? That is a legitimate question. And I'm not crazy about Andrew Gillum either. All right? I am, even some of the stuff, like I said, some of the stuff he wants to do. Okay, $15 an hour, minimum wage. It's got to be voted on by the people of Florida. Boy, he's going to have the magic life. I'm the governor. I'm going to do this regardless of voting. Yeah, we like flip-flopper Scott when he did some stuff that's unconstitutional as well, ex post facto laws. You're going to do the same thing, Gillum? It's not going to fly. It's not going to work, man. The whole truth of the matter is you have your obligation as governor. You're not some king of Florida if you get elected. Same thing with DeSantis. The whole thing is, my friends, this is nothing more than the battle of the pro-establishment candidates. Who's going to control who? Like they say, he gets funded. It's funny about him being called anti-Semitic. How the hell is he getting? Why? Explain to me, to all the folks out there that claim to be him being anti-Semitic because he supports BDS, which to me is free speech. Okay? Free speech. There's supposed to be some law in the books in Florida, null and void under Article 1, Section 10 of the Florida Constitution, because it does violate Article 1, Section 2, 4, and 5 of the same bill, of same document. And so you call him anti-Semitic. How come he got funded by an Austrian-Hungarian Jew who was a Nazi collaborator and hunted down his own people? Think about that. So the whole thing, him being anti-Semitic, is irrelevant. Just like his cohorts, his little followers and disciples, to her conformity was to say, oh yeah, well, he's a racist because he said not monkeying around. Please. So juvenile. And if you guys, if this keep this up, it will be one sorry ass election. So I want to tell all you folks, especially the press, you can put some hardcore questions in there. No sugarcoating, apple polishing, bending over for the man. I want some real journalistic questions out to Florida's best interest, especially when it comes to these two candidates are really anti-declaration. They're not Declaration of Rights friendly. Article 1. Challenge them on that. Please, challenge them on that. Both of them. So that's how I look at it. And you're talking to a guy, I don't hate Israel. There's some beautiful people that live in that country. And the history is the disturbing history is so complex. Remember, because even if you study this, who controlled Palestine before it became Israel, the state of Israel? Great Britain. And you know who got screwed by this? The rank and file from both sides. And after it's all done. And if you say that he's anti-Semitic and it's a rogue element of the government of Israel, destroying and depriving people's homes, just kicking them out, evicting them, and so forth, is that the same thing? Remember, anti-Semites are people that were a particular ethnic group from those regions, the Middle East region at the least. So we're going to use anti-Semite. It's not just Jews. So please, Mr. Credo, have some merit with all due respect. All right. Let's hear from the Free Beacon as well. Came out today. And this one here says, Trump signs executive order to sanction foreigners who interfere in U.S. elections. This is by Mikkel Smits. President Trump on Wednesday signed an executive order that authorizes new sanctions on foreign countries or individuals that try to interfere in U.S. elections. Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats and White House National Security Advisor John Bolton discussed the order in a briefing with reporters. It's a further effort among several that the administration has made to protect the United States against foreign interference in our elections and really our political process more broadly. Bolton said, we felt it was important to demonstrate the president has taken command on this issue and that's something he cares deeply about. Coase adds that while order is a response to Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election, the Trump administration is looking beyond Moscow. We have seen signs of meddling from not Russia, but from China, from Iran, even North Korea, he said. We are not taking nothing for granted. I'm sorry, but it's their fault. I'm sorry. That is so pathetic. But Israel doesn't. Come on in. We love you guys. You could interfere with our elections and teach us how to wipe our rear ends politically. John Bolton. Coates warned. Is it Coates? Yeah, sir, it's Coates. I gotta say, not Bolton, but you could put Bolton near, but Coates. Yeah, Israel, you could teach us how to wipe our rear ends and make love to our wives. Coates warned last month that Russia is trying to interfere in the mid-2018 midterm elections. In regards to Russian involvement in midterm elections, we continue to see pervasive messaging campaign by Russia and try to weaken and divide the United States, he said. I'm a witch hunter. It makes me a man, yeah. But the United States, when Israel interferes, it's exceptional because we're so special. I'm sorry, I'm just being sarcastic. He goes, I just find this is a dog and pony show, right? Trump signed the order just 2 months before the midterms. Under the order titled opposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in a United States election. The intelligence community will have 45 days after each election to assess whether any foreign actors meddled. The intelligence agencies will then send their findings to the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, which will have 45 days to decide whether the U.S. should oppose sanctions on foreign entities in question. Following those reports, the Treasury and State Departments can decide on appropriate additional sanctions to impose. If it's Israel, your country is anti-Semitic. The order defines election interference in broad terms, going more direct hacking into election systems to include operations on social media such as distribution of propaganda and disinformation and the release of hacked political documents. So the mainstream media, garbage media, can't use propaganda, right? Or hacked political documents. The announcement on Wednesday surprised some officials on Capitol Hill who know that no draft of the order has been discussed with Congress prior to the signing. Still, some action on election interference has been anticipated. The White House publicized last month that the National Security Council examined the issue twice with Trump presiding. Some lawmakers expressed dissatisfaction with the new executive order. Senator Marco Rubio and Chris Van Hollen criticized the measure for not going far enough. Today's announcement by administration recognizes the threat, but it does not go far enough to address it. If they wrote it in a joint statement. Yeah, I bet you the both of them belly up and spread their butt cheeks to the Council of Foreign Relations, right? Glam boy Rubio, where's my mirror? 'Cause I look so pretty. I'm sorry. I'm just in a good jolly mood here, okay? Both lawmakers previously proposed legislation that would impose mandatory sanctions on those who interfere in U.S. elections rather than directing various departments and agencies to go through a months-long process. So, can you tell me that the American Israeli Political Action Committee, acronym AIPAC, Israel can be sanctioned if they get interfere with the elections? Come on. Oh, they're special. They're our friends. We can trust them. Please. I just see more of a biased game than ever before. And don't get me wrong. If you read Fellows Papers 2 through 5 by John Jay about influence by foreign nations, that's fine, and so did George Washington's farewell address. I think, what's that dude's name? Adam Credo should start reading that. You know, with his pro-Israel stance. You know, they do no wrong. They're exceptional. That's one thing I have to say, because the fact is this, my friends. Yeah, these interferences are jokes. Been going on for a good period of time, and now, hey, as far as I'm concerned, get rid of these bogus lobbyist groups. Go contaminate space somewhere else. They should remember, it should be a republic, not a democracy, nor a corporation. Get rid of that corporation stance, which I think it came out in 1871 to be exact. Title 28, Section 3002. Read it. U.S. Code to be exact. Read it, you'll be surprised, okay? So, and don't worry, your Lord and Savior is not going to tell you that. That's how government is. Bunch of saps, mind-controlled saps. All right, this one here came from the Mises Institute. It came out yesterday. Yeah, it came out. Oh yeah, it came out yesterday. And it says here why elites prefer a centralized legal system, because they can tell us how to wipe our rear ends. And it's by Chris Carlton. In January of 1819, the New York City District Attorney made his case against a man who allowed his pigs to roam the streets of the city, creating a nuisance. Although the attorney called no witnesses, he regaled the jury with horror stories about the problems associated with letting pigs roam the streets of New York. This practice was just commonly observed in poorer localities, created a nuisance when, for instance, young boys got in trouble for riding the pigs. Sometimes the pigs would defecate on people. It's time to do it to politicians, right? Ladies might come across a disturbing image of two pigs copulating in a public space. The mayor, then appointed by the city council, sat as judge over the case. And his position was clear. Custom of allowing pigs to roam the streets of New York City needed to end. More well-to-do citizens cared little for streets, that were full of pigs. But there were counter arguments. The poor depend on pigs to provide extra calories during the winter, and allowing them to move freely in the city streets served dual purpose. On the one hand, it allowed the pigs to feed and fatten themselves off the refuse they scavenge. Yeah. And on the other, by allowing pigs to feed off to the excrement and garbage on the streets, they serve as a mean of keeping the streets cleaner in the face of local government that failed to provide sanitation services for poor areas. Imperfect as a form of sanitation may have been, it was a function that the people valued. More importantly, however, this is that practice of letting pigs roam loose on the city streets was a custom in certain areas. It was seen as a traditional right of the people in these neighborhoods. Mayor of New York City in 1819 felt otherwise, though sure it may be customary practice of certain neighborhoods upheld by local courts, but his jurisdiction was the entire city and the citizens of the city, and his views had equal right to all streets of every locality in New York. It was not within the legitimate authority of the people of a neighborhood to decide what they considered a nuisance. A nuisance of color or hook may not, of necessity, may be a nuisance to the people at the Battery, and reads the mayor's opinion on the case. But it must be such as that people at large would be offended if they happened to come to a place. All citizens were entitled to equal domain of their locality within the city of New York, regardless of whether or not they live in the neighborhood in question. This, however, was not a practice too common to the time. The vast majority of legal matters of this nature were extremely localized. Following the American Revolution, the practice of allowing pigs to freely roam the streets was upheld in the respective neighborhoods that observed the practice, and it was proscribed in others. This seemed to work fine in keeping the people's peace, but it was the anathema to the political elites who wished to see the law become an hysteric body of uniform laws that applied blindly to all citizens, irrespective of context or custom. And for this, the city needs a statutory regulation dictating the practice of all distinct localities within the city. And that's exactly what the city passed. Yeah. God bless a police state. I'll teach you how to wipe your butt. The centralization of the American legal system. The great centralizing movement in the American legal system is generally seen to have come as a result of the Civil War, during which the Lincoln administration concentrated an unprecedented amount of power in the hands of a national government. This analysis is correct, but it overshadows the centralizing movements that preceded it. Namely, the move to centralize the legal system from the local neighborhood to the level cities and the states. Anachronistically, the modern conception of states' rights is seen as a decentralized reduction of national authority. In the current political climate, and this has been the case for more than a century, this notion of states' rights is accurate. Calls for the states' rights implies a relative increase in the legal authority of a state in relation to the national government via reduction of power in Washington, D.C. But in the early years of the new republic, the pursuit of states' rights was quite different. The increase in the state's authority came not through the reduction of nearly non-existent federal government, but through a vast increase in the legal authority of the state government over the cities and smaller localities, preemptive laws, etc. You can look at these things in a bigger picture, of course. In the case of New York City's pig controversy, the citywide regulation prohibiting pigs from the streets was never well observed in neighborhoods that had a long tradition of freely roaming pigs. 30 years after the city prohibited pigs, a Norwegian traveler visited New York and wrote fondly of the favored pet of the Americans, the swine. He saw everywhere wandering peaceful in huge herds. The attempts by the city to regulate and prohibit this practice were difficult to enforce and produced unintended consequences, like the rise of the pig nappers, who turned stolen pigs to collect fines paid by the owners to get them back. Extortion. But the city was only authorized to use fines to enforce ordinances. In order to establish any public offices charged with removing pigs, they will need to appeal to the authority of the state. Thus, only a few years after the passage of the original ordinance, a new piece of legislation was drafted and sent to Albany to enact a statewide law that regulated pigs. See? Government, the parasite society, government, psychic vampires, government, the Orwellian state, try to have everything for you and me. Exactly, right? The goal of uniformity, but in the law, now moving beyond the city. In the name of uniformity, legal authority was being centralized. The pig law is little more than an entertaining example of the process by which the early American states centralized their legal system so that by the middle of the century, political and legal power has concentrated significantly in the hand of the state legislators and judiciaries. The motivation to centralize legal authority was entirely political. For the political elites who had usually received a formal legal education, making a law uniformly applicable to all the citizens of a state was way of making legal matters arcane. This was good for business for a trained lawyer, but it was problematic for the average citizen who increasingly depended on costly legal expertise to handle what should have been minor affairs. The justification for the pursuit of the uniformity was legal consistency, and to the modern mind, this seems like an entire reasonable and pursuit-worthy goal. After all, the concept of the rule of law is held nearly scarred by people of both sides of the political spectrum, but in the early 19th century, consistency was valued less than flexibility in the legal system. When the courts were local, the people of a given community had a vested interest in seeing justice carried out according to the particularities of each individual case. As people involved were known figures rather than the faceless abstractions in the form of legal theory. And for those who were not fortunate enough to find themselves at the top of the legal hierarchy, the uneducated, the poor, women, children, and blacks, this flexibility upheld it, even modern notions of justice, if imperfectly, more effectively than did the centralized and legal consistent courts that followed. Hopefully you folks are understanding where this author's coming from. Nothing new under the sun, right? To give but one example, when John Belton O'Neill was on trial for beating his wife in South Carolina in early years of the 19th century, his lawyers argued correctly, according to the legal customs at the time, that a husband had a right to discipline his wife. The judge disagreed, a ruling that perplexed O'Neill for decades, even as he reflected back in the decisions of the 1850s after a career making as one of the leading figures in South Carolina's push for statewide consistency in the law. To O'Neill, the legal arguments he made in defense of his spousal abuse was entirely correct according to customary law, but localized customary law was inconsistent. I let him far too uncertain of how given a judge might rule his authority to beat his wife, just as might produce some neighborhoods in New York to allow pigs to roam freely while others do not. Customary laws was flexible, but it wasn't consistent. The flexibility of these localized legal systems did not guarantee justice would be done, just as easily could have upheld O'Neill's right to be abusive, or a slave owner's right to kill a slave for some infraction, to name another matter of inconsistency in the local courts. But for those who are not part of the political elite, the flexibility of the local courts upheld justice better than the consistency of state legislation. As Laura F. Edwards points out, given the legal ambiguity of a term like cruel, a local jury be evaluating the evidence in context where it was impossible to separate people involved from these legal abstractions. The local courts saw cruelty more frequently than the state legislature had. But the move to centralize the courts won out, and uniform state statutes that gradually did away the notions like context and circumstance became the norm by 1840. Localism was dying. The grandiose courthouses were erected, and many citizens could no longer afford to bring grievances to a court that now required time-consuming travel to a city and costly legal services of a trained lawyer. But with legal authority now concentrated in the state legislature and judiciary, The political elite benefited tremendously from the new consistency of the law that, at least in theory, applied equally to all citizens. When the federal government centralized authority in the 1860s, it was only carrying out the tradition established by the state governments in the first half of the century. Very interesting indeed. He does have a podcast called Historical Controversies Podcast. Interesting stuff here. So yes, that's why, my friends, you gotta be vigilant in these things. Now you got technology, we can bring it back a little by little, state, local, and all that. That's why if you read the state constitution, there are laws in the books that breach that. Challenge these bastards. Spread the message. That's how you counter it. Enlightenment. Knowledge is freedom. Ignorance is enslavement. What side do you want to be on? That's how I look at it. But I'm about to check out Mr. Colton's podcast. It'd be very cool. Alright, I'm going to do one more and be right back. Alright. Yeah, it's a little bit long, my friends, and I do apologize. It's in that mood to talk, I would say. Do one more here. And it came from The Two Dimensions of Modern Warfare by Bob Livingston. As it says here, modern warfare rides with two dimensions. One is still old war machine that goes abroad seeking new enemies so as to justify more expenditures on new and bigger weapons. It is visible and ongoing, although mainstream media rarely talk about it anymore. But other dimension of modern warfare is seductively hysteric. I will describe it. It goes directly to the psyche. It's almost totally invisible to the natural eye. It's almost totally invisible to the human spirit. It cannot be measured or calculated by the human IQ because it operates above the threshold of intelligence. It is an organism that suppresses the human intellect. It is not a phenomenon that the natural mind can confront and deal with. But it can be discerned by those prolific readers and background information. When it comes to understand this cause of human motivation, all frivolity is stripped away and the emperor has no clothes. The modern-day political and economic arena is the stage in front for socialism. It is called many things such as democracy and representative government, and a few diehards occasionally refer to America as a republic. These names, democracy, etc., are foolish and childlike frivolity. They are fog, not substance. Their purpose is to cloud the mind in reality. There are many serious and honest economists and analysts who are very astute at reading the circus of American politics and economics. Many of them, like Mark Faber, see very clearly that so-called financial and economic solutions to the American people are made to fail. In fact, the bailout solutions and trade wars have nothing to do than more system further toward collapse. A thought here on psychological warfare, since the American system poses as an open society with a free press. There's a pretension to allow open debate, but only on spurious issues. The effect is that long as the issues are not real or a spurious, they are welcome and promote as open debate and commentary. The people do not have a clue that all public commentary is spurious. When this is the issue that even very savvy commentators fail to understand or even mention. The problem is that all of them trying to see and understand the American system as free enterprise when in fact it's been a socialist for 100 years. The world governed is by very different personages from what is imagined. Benjamin Disraeli. This is the most sensational testimony of the power of naming government systems something they are not and imposing it on the public mind and psyche by a long process of public education and highly sophisticated and organized propaganda on a worldwide basis. There has never been an equal, or even at this moment it is more powerful than ever, deceiving more people than ever. Socialism in America today is seen as a raving success because its hidden handlers call it by other names. Hitler needed made an attempt to call Nazi Germany the great democracy, though his efforts to put a pretty face on an ugly system, he certainly must have understood the propaganda significance of the sensational power of people persuasion with names, fronts, and high-sounding human freedom terms. Alice, for the record, for the U.S. historians will not. I hope to see National Socialism as different from American democracy today, or even at the time of World War II, when the two, U.S. and Germany, were locked into mortal combat. In fact, except for their different names bestowed upon each by their hidden elite masters, they are more identical than identical twins. The bad guys versus the good guys propaganda was meaningless and ridiculous, but served as well to drive millions to their deaths on all sides, as well as motivated parents to sacrifice their young in total ignorance of reality. All is a disgrace before God. My mother used to say that the human race will allow itself generation to generation to be twisted and perverted like animals to the slaughter and precious few questions. Why about anything? In fact, the more uneducated, the less capacity to think outside the prescribed system. The fewer conclude that the system that they grew up is neither legal nor illegal as taught by the system itself. It is manipulated fraud in which the owners of the system do not live within their own law, but above the law. The law is for you. Things may not be nice just because they have a pretty face. The major combatants of World War II were identical, making the Nuremberg trials a sham and a disgraceful spectacle. And in fact, major U.S. corporates funded and embedded the Nazi war machine up to and during the outbreak of hostilities with the West. Of course, this perspective bears directly on the current financial crisis. The world systems hide their dirty deeds by hiding the issues. They do not dare let the real issues arise. All kinds of stupid and meaningless debates are fostered to throw sand in the eyes of the uninitiated. This satisfies the people that they are in the know because they saw it on CSNBC or read it in the Wall Street Journal. My friends, it is the hysteric that runs the system. Frustrated not yourself with crass frivolity and ridiculous drivel. This nonsense is for the crowd who loves deception and who gets mad at the truth. And to the back of the issue of World War II, for it is the issue today, World War II was prosecuted and carried out with fiat paper money on all sides. It would never happen otherwise. There would never been any Hitler Germany or fourth-term Franklin Roosevelt without paper money. This should have been an issue at the Nuremberg trials, with all sides of the trials equal defendants, including the money creators. This issue was obviously to everyone without exception at the Nuremberg trials. These deceptions carry out forward to generation after generation. Here's what has happened to the American people. The money creators, Federal Reserve, and the U.S. Treasury as symbolic partners are creating non-substance fiat money and buying, stealing substance with it. Has anyone wondered why federal money never gives out? As admitted in congressional testimony in the Federal Reserve publications, the federal money creators can create any amount of money. Of course, this money is not substance fiat. It is imaginary number that appear either on green pieces of paper called dollars or as computer symbols. The key word to describe fiat non-substance is infinity. This imaginary money system can be created to infinity and indeed is on its way. The American people around the world believe that this non-substance is real money. There is an exercise in the unbelievable and unimaginable delusions that is accepted by the mind as real. This is socialism at its most perfect creation, and is doing exactly socialism's work of transferring the wealth and savings of the American people to the state without payment. My friends, you may have a title to your home, your savings, or your accumulated wealth, but the state is the owner without compensation to you. Why? Everything you own is denominated in fiat US dollars, as the Fed created fiat to buy up American euphemism for bailout. The nominal dollar ownership of your property diminishes. This system allows no escape from its fiat. If you were to bury your pile of fiat 40 miles deep into a concrete vault, the Fed system could diminish your purchasing power and real savings by simply multiplying the money numbers in circulation. The Fed is creating fiat to bail out the American bankrupt system. All this wealth flows to the system for free without payment. This delusion of fiat money equally diminishes your personal savings and retirement. What about the scenario causing a huge government debt? Understand this. Remember the key word used above to describe the nature of fiat creation? The key word is infinity. This word defies, voids, and cancels the world debt. Now, how can the system have debt as advertised and propagandized when it creates fiat money to infinity as revealed in the Federal Reserve's own publication? Debt implies that there are limits to money and spending. This applies to government at all levels except the federal government. Debt is not a concept that can be applied to federal government's so-called accounting. This is one of the system's deep, dark secrets. The whole federal system is a fiat paper Ponzi. Same old song and dance, my friends. And remember, fiat money destroyed the German economy in the 20s. Fall of the Reichsmark from 1922 to 1928 to pay off the restitution for World War I. Who got the power? The Nazis. Adolf Hitler. Bingo! And you see what's happening now under the fiat currency. That's why a lot of these countries I talked about before in my show want to dump the dollar, because there's no backing. And this is why central banking is part of the Communist Manifesto. Read it yourselves by Karl Marx. Look it up. You'll be surprised. It's not capitalism. That's the bald-faced lie. Plain and simple. The whole thing here, my friends, try to give you the best imaginable information to my ability. And I'm glad many of you folks check my show, and I appreciate it. And, it's all well and good, okay? I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or can be setting something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. I will post all my information, social media sites, and my email addresses, which is 2, on my Spreaker page. Okay? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.